everybody, to another episode of the TPT Podcast, TPT Pachi Podcast, the TPT Podcast.
What's up, everybody? It's the TPT Chiefs Football Podcast. We're back the day after Monday Night Football, where we took on the Eagles and unfortunately took that little L, 21-17. I'm your host, Zach Story. Jaden is not with us today. He is not feeling well, so make sure in the comment section to go wish Jaden well, because there's no show without Jaden. So we're going to get into this game. Obviously a Chiefs L is never fun to talk about, really, but it's better to be a good L than a bad L. The Broncos game was a lot different. Like, there was not many positives coming out of the Broncos game. We could talk about, we gave them good field position, that's why they scored, blah, 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 but when, at least at the time, we thought the Broncos were terrible. Like, now they're proving to be a decent team, but at the time, it was like, this is the worst, this is the Colts loss from last year. This Eagles game is a lot different because there's a lot of positives, a huge negative that I'm sure we're going to talk about regarding the receiving corps. It's been the biggest talking point, at least from what I've seen in like national media. I watched the PFF review of the game, and they didn't even mention the Eagles on the entire review. They just talked about Chiefs wide receivers the entire time. And, I mean, rightfully so. We get no separation. We can't catch. And so it's an issue. And we're going to get into, like, individually what receivers are performing, which ones not. But for me, it all starts with MVS. And I hate to be that guy that just talks trash on our players because I know they're humans. And I know, I mean, MVS was huge for us last year in the AFC Championship game. But I don't like having players on our roster for a long time that have one game to go back to. Now, we signed him to a 3-year deal. I'm sure he's going to be cut this offseason because the dead cap is not as much as it was before this season. But I'm not just going to let the one AFC Championship game, you know, cover everything else. He's basically done nothing for us the rest of his tenure here. And so if he's a deep threat, he's a deep threat receiver. He runs fast and he's tall. He can catch deep balls, apparently. Apparently, that's what it said when in his sales pitch to us. And he can't catch the deep ball, and he doesn't get separation. And the only reason he got separation on that last play is just, I don't know what the Eagles, Bradley Roby's an old, slow corner. He was covering him, and he just went right over the top of him. And this is a deep ball that you should catch. This is a perfect throw. You're wide open. It's just like in the beginning of the games when you're just jogging down the side. Okay, it's a lot different than that, but it's basically you're jogging down the sidelines, and Mahomes throws it right over your shoulder, and you catch it. And he couldn't. And it's as bad as the Tony drop in that first week that led to that pick six. I mean, basically, that was the game, just like that Tony drop was the game. But like I've said, this is the best podcast to listen to after a good loss, because as much as we can talk about that drop and the other drops, Justin Watson's final drop, which that's a lot to ask for him to catch it, but he should have caught that. I said it's 50-50. Kelsey's drop that basically made us lose a lot of time, where we had to spend a couple more plays to get to where we would have been if he hadn't dropped that. As well as, I mean, Rice had a drop. Kelsey had another drop. Kelsey had a red zone fumble. Mistakes. The Chiefs beat the Chiefs better than any team. The only team that beats the Chiefs better than the Chiefs is the Bengals. And they're not going to beat us this year. Okay. So we're our own enemy. We're in our own way. Looking forward to the playoff picture in the rest of the AFC. These teams are not on our level, even if we're playing not great. See, if we played like we did last night on the offensive side of the ball, we don't beat a Baltimore, we don't beat a Miami. But if we play just our average, I'm not saying league average. League average is 11 drops so far. We have, I believe, 22, 23. So league average is quite a bit better than ours when it comes to our receivers. If we just play our average at receiver, something like the Vikings game, something like that first Denver game, something like the Jets game, like not even great performances by the offense, just enough to put up 20 points, we're good. We're sitting pretty. And I remember the first year we won the Super Bowl, The Baltimore team looked nasty. Obviously, Tom Brady's still in the conference. And then the Titans came out of nowhere. Derrick Henry was just on a mission that year. This is the weakest AFC we've had in the Mahomes era. At least that's what it looks like it's going to shape out to be. Of course, it could change because we didn't know Tennessee was going to be good. And so, although this is a huge problem, a problem that might cap our ceiling to we can't win the Super Bowl because, like I said, our average is still very below average. People always talk about regressing to the mean, whether it's positive or negative. We might not regress when it comes to drops. What I do think we're going to regress when it comes to turnovers. Despite our defense getting so many sacks and having great secondary, we have a turnover differential of -5. And that's partially because of Mahomes, partially because of fumbles like Kelsey had yesterday. And it's weird because although we force a lot of fumbles, we're not actually getting all the fumble recoveries. Trent McDuffie actually leads the league in forced fumbles as a corner, most of them coming off of Spags' nasty blitzes. Again, I just want to talk about Trent McDuffie for a second because each week he ones up himself. Last year, he got injured in that first game, missed some time, came back and was our best cover corner the rest of the year, helping us win a Super Bowl. But he didn't look like a superstar. I mean, it looked like he was promising, especially with his coverage skills. And then this year, he looks like a mix of Darrelle Revis and I'm exaggerating. Darrelle Revis in coverage, and then he looks like L'Jarius Sneed tackling. He looks like a L'Jarius Sneed, like just a shorter, much smaller, short arms version. Which that was one of the concerns coming out of college. Is he's short and he doesn't have long arms. I saw a stat that since 2004, people with wingspans, corners with wingspans shorter than his, have done basically nothing in the league, like out of the dozens of them. And he just is a tackle machine coming off the blitz. I was like, it can't get any better than Sneed blitzing the last few years. And then McDuffie comes in and it's like, no, McDuffie's the guy you blitz because McDuffie just wrecks games. And I need that McDuffie jersey. And so I'm going to definitely get that McDuffie jersey with Jaden's jerseys. Quick little plug. But McDuffie played great. Sneed held A.J. Brown to 1 for 8, which is, I mean, A.J. Brown has had like 5 150-yard games this year, and he held him to 1 for 8. There was the one ticky-tack, illegal contact or hands to the face penalty early in the game, I think on one of the first couple drives. And then after that, it's like A.J. Brown was targeted, I believe, 4 times, only 1 catch for 8 yards. And that's exactly what we talked about last week. How we kept Hill in check, how we're going to keep Devontae Adams in check next week. This team, Spags knows that he has a corner. Sneed might not be the best cover guy in the world. He might not even be top 15 in the league in that aspect. But he's physical. He gets in your head. He's not afraid to play press coverage. He's long. He's fast. And the way we've been getting pressure means no time for these routes to develop. No time for AJ to have a deep dig route, which he normally gets open on because Sneed's there, and then McDuffie's blitzing, or Chris Jones is wrecking havoc, or Karlaftis, or Omenahu, or Willie Gay's blitzing, or Tranquil's blitzing. Like, it's just, this defense is poetry in motion, and it's really made football a lot more fun because, I mean, like, as much fun as it's been watching Mahomes go crazy every single year, throw 40, 50 touchdowns, and the defense, a lot like, I mean, they've been good points per game, but every Chiefs fan knows that it seems like offenses used to just walk down the field against us every year. Even the years we had good defenses like last year and 2019, it still seemed like they would just march down the field. And this year, it seems like every other drive's a 3 and out. And it's just the craziest thing in the world. We're blessed as Chiefs fans, and I'm extremely positive right now because, I've sat with my thoughts today. I was at work, and really all I was thinking about was the Eagles game last night. And when you think about the fact that we had 2 red zone turnovers, now that's different. Okay, the Eagles, Jalen Hurts threw a pick, I believe, on like the 30-yard line. They had 1 turnover. It was on the 30-yard line. There's no guarantee they scored a touchdown there. They're probably settling for a field goal the way our defense is playing. Our 2 turnovers were Kelsey with inside the 15, okay, when we were marching down the field, like the only time we did anything on offense in that second half. And Patrick Mahomes making a super uncharacteristic bad throw. That Watson was open if he would have just let him a little farther left. Now there was a guy in the corner of the end zone, but Mahomes gets the ball in tight. Like there's no way that corner gets over to make a play on Watson. And that is the game right there. And so in this podcast, we look at not just the numbers, but what is behind the story of the game. Those 2 turnovers were the game. And that's why I'm saying we're not going to regress when it comes to the drops. We might not, because, we have the worst receiving core in the league. I saw someone say New England's is worse. No, it's not. They have Kendrick Bourne. If we had Kendrick Bourne, he would be nearing 1,000 yards by now, because Mahomes would be like, oh, this guy knows how to run routes and catch, and the other guys don't. And Kelsey's being triple teamed, which, just like in the Chargers game, we played our best offensive half since last year in the Chargers game in the first half. Partially because the Chargers just do not believe in coverage. They don't like it. And then that second half, the worst pass defense in the league, one of the worst pass defenses ever, holds us to nothing. And Kelsey's bracketed the entire time. Kelsey's getting frustrated. And we said on the podcast that week that is the blueprint, and that not every game it's going to take 2 halves for people to realize it. It's not always just going to be the second half. Now this game, our offense moved on the first drive and continued to move, but it was not Chiefs offense. Like, let's not get it twisted. Our first half was sort of like the Dolphins' first half, where we looked, we had a 3-0 to start, and then we looked really strong, and then it just fizzled out until we were completely neutralized. And partially because of drops, but partially just because you can't get stuff going if you neutralize our best player, because we don't have anyone to pick up the slack. Now, looking at receiver numbers, right here I see Rashee Rice on the season has a PFF grade of 79, which, if you understand PFF, single season grades normally they seem pretty low. Career grades get higher because they really value consistency and doing it over time. Last time I checked, Rashee Rice was a top 7 graded rookie in the entire league and a top 15 rated receiver in the entire league, which is not surprising because the eye test says that. Now, the eye test does not always say that he gets open, but if you're making something out of nothing like he does, like every time he catches the ball, whether it's a screen pass, a little check down, like a little out, he gets the ball and he bursts past it doesn't matter who the first person is in front of him. He's getting past. It's like he has a superstar X factor, and it's yak him up. He has yak him up, and he's only a rookie. The way he made Darius Slay look on that I believe it was the opening drive, was silly, and he does that every single game. Just like he did against the Dolphins, he got that screen pass, and he just ran it in like no one was in front of him, but there was 4 defenders in front of him. And so his yak ability is what we need, because if guys aren't getting open, you have to resort to a get this guy the ball type of play style. You can't resort to a let the play develop, and then, because that results in sacks, that results in errant throws, that results in forcing it to Kelsey. We have had success getting guys like Rice and Tony the ball and having them make a play. That's all of our good drives start off like that. And then I want to go to MVS, which I already talked about MVS a little at the beginning of the pod. But MVS's grades of 53, which if you color code that mug is a red, which a red is you don't want a red. That really means he's a bottom player at his position, which it looks like he is when you watch him. And he's still getting some of the most snaps on the team. Him and Justin Watson are leading in snaps. Rashee Rice is still on the uptrend, but he was only at 57 last night. I believe he was at more in the game prior. And it just comes to a point where I know Andy Reid is a smart guy. I mean, we love to sit on our couches and say Andy Reid doesn't know this, Andy Reid's doing this, he's acting stupid. But then at the end, we always end up being like, Andy was right, other than a couple years. And I believe Andy is going to be right about this receiving core, and he's going to find ways. We might not have a top 5 offense, top 7 offense. If we can have this top 10 offense that does not turn the ball over, that takes what the defense gives him, that gets the ball into Pacheco's hands, into McKinnon's hands, into Rice's hands, into Kelsey's hands, we should make and win the Super Bowl, because this defense is nasty. This is the second straight week that we have won against an elite offense and completely neutralized their offense, like completely. A.J. Brown had 8 yards. And almost half those yards came on one pass where Mike Edwards was on Devontae Smith. We had 5 sacks in the first half. Chris Jones had 2 sacks. He hadn't had a sack in 5 weeks. 5 weeks of real time, like 3 games. Karlaftis continued. Karlaftis is going to have a double-digit sack season. Ominahu just wrecks havoc. McDuffie has a knack for the ball. He has a nose. McDuffie is the best DB, is the best corner in the league right now. And if you look at our remaining schedule, we have the 4th easiest strength of schedule remaining. We play the Bengals without Burrow. We play the Bills with that beat-up defense. That defense that is nothing like the Bills that we have shredded in the past few years. Their defense is nothing like it was. We play the Raiders twice with Aiden O'Connell. If you saw what this defense did to Jalen Hurts to start the game, and what this defense did to Tua, and what this defense did to Trevor Lawrence, what do you think this defense is going to do to Aiden O'Connell? Is that even his name? I'm not even sure if that's his name, honestly. I just said Aiden. He looks like an Aiden. I think that's his name, but I'm not sure. And we get to play him twice in the final 7 weeks. We get to play the Chargers again. And the Chargers defense, well, first of all, their offense is falling apart because all the receivers get hurt every year. Obviously, we played our first game, no Mike Williams. But now, old dude is out. I can see his face, but I don't remember his name. He's out. Austin Eckler looks slower than ever. He's not explosive anymore. He's not the same Austin Eckler. He was never really an issue against us in the past, but still. And then we play the Patriots, who have they have the same starting quarterback, but they have a new quarterback it's always Bailey Zappi by the end of the game. But to start, it's always Mac. It's like they have a starting pitcher and a reliever and a closer. Like, if you bench him every game, you should probably bench him. You should probably just bench him. And it's not like Zappi's going to be any better, but it's kind of like what you do if you continuously bench the same guy. Like, see, Zach Wilson got benched. Now he's not the starter. That's how you do it. Because you're not winning anything with Mac. You might as well try Bailey. We also have Green Bay. Now, we get to play at Lambeau. I'm pretty sure this is Mahomes' first time playing at Lambeau. I'm excited to see the Chiefs play at Lambeau. It's been a minute. And they have Jordan Love at quarterback. Aaron Jones is hurt. We don't know if he'll play. But his injury's gladly not as severe as we thought it was at first. Their defense, they have a strong pass rush with Gary, but Green Bay is nothing, okay? Green Bay, New England, the Raiders twice, the Chargers, the Bengals, the Bills. That's our schedule for the rest of the year. If I'm doing probability, I'm saying we have 1.5 losses there. I'd say give us a 70% chance of beating Buffalo and about 80% chance of beating everyone else. And that comes out probably to about 1.5 losses. So probably finishing the year 13-4, hopefully. And I think we're going to get, data says we have a 34% chance of the 1 seed. But data doesn't take into account the fact that we are the Chiefs. And as like homers that sound, like everyone in the NFL knows what I mean when I say that. The path depends on these things that I outlined earlier. Turnovers, especially in the red zone, and drops. The drops might not fix themselves. The turnovers will probably fix themselves. Mahomes knows he can't throw interceptions like that. If you look at Mahomes' touchdown interception ratio throughout his career, it's gotten worse. It's gotten a lot worse through the years, which is weird. You'd think that's one of the things that gets better as a quarterback ages. No, he threw 5 interceptions his second year. He threw 6 his third year, 3 of them in one game. And then since then, he's been throwing like 12 interceptions a year. And he's going to throw more this year because he already has 10 through 11 games, I believe. But Mahomes is the smartest quarterback in the league. Andy Reid is the best offensive schemer and play caller in the league. And with all the complaints that we have, we're still 7th in offensive DVOA, which is a stat that I honestly could not tell you what it does, but it appears better than other stats. So I'm going to use it. And also it helps with my narrative. We're 7th in offensive DVOA. 4th in defensive. That is lacking. We are definitely first, but, no stats perfect. And 10th in special teams. We're 7th in offensive DVOA this year. This is after the Eagles game too. If that stat has any merit, and I don't know what it adjusts for, what it doesn't. I'm being very transparent here. I like it though. I like it. Because a lot of the raw numbers do not say that. Like the raw numbers, 5.9 points in the second half. Now that number is true, like because of how easily we are neutralized with only one actual legitimate receiving threat. But like I said, some things have their ways of evening themselves out. Before I wrap it up, I want to give big shout outs to our trench players, our O-line and our D-line, because they gave us the edge in that game. Like, we didn't win the game, but up to the very last few minutes, we had the edge, and it's because they dominated the team with the supposed elite O-line and D-line. Our O-line and D-line looked far better than theirs, and theirs are touted as the best O-line and the D-line that last year set the NFL record in sacks, and this year is still playing well despite the secondary behind it playing poorly. And our first of all, our D-line looked way better than their O-line. And our O-line showed up and showed that last year everyone thought we had the best O-line in the league other than the Eagles, and that still might be true. We replaced our tackles, and our tackles are better. Orlando Brown is not doing stuff for Cincinnati. Like, Veach dodged a bullet with that. I noticed dominance, especially in pass protection on the interior. No one was getting to Mahomes through the middle. No one was getting to the Mahomes. Creed played phenomenally. I did not notice Joe Thuney at all, which is usual. That is just, those two together in pass protection is unfair, honestly. And lots of quarterbacks struggle with interior pressure because it's unusual. Most pressure comes from the outside. That's why edges are their sacks numbers are so high, and that's why they're so highly paid. But the real pressure that gets to quarterbacks is the interior pressure because they're not used to it. And that's one thing that we do extremely well because we have Chris Jones. Interior pressure throws off everything, especially if your quarterback's not mobile. And back to the Chiefs' defensive line, the Eagles' O-line, like Lane Johnson had allowed 1 sack in the last 2 years or whatever. And I don't even know if he allowed a sack, but I know he was getting beat. Jason Kelce looked really good in the screen game and in the run game as usual. But in pass protection, he didn't look anything special because Chris Jones was having a field day out there in that first half. And so big shouts out to both of our lines. And that instills so much confidence in me because no one in the AFC has like defensive and offensive line as good as ours. Baltimore's is strong. They lead the league in sacks like we saw on the broadcast yesterday. And then obviously their O-line has been spectacular this year. But if you look at individual player by player, and if you look at along with what Spags brings when it comes to blitz packages, you can't tell me that Baltimore's pass rush is better than ours. You can't tell me that. Their run defense might be better. But when we get Bolton back, it won't be because Bolton just sniffs it out. That defense is going to take us to the promised land. I'm very positive after a loss because it's a good loss. There's people say there's no such thing as a good loss. There is such thing as a good loss if the reason is slightly luck-based. Now, like I said, the drops aren't luck-based. We are the worst catching team in the league. And that might prove to be a detriment that gets us out of here. But turnovers, you can't tell me that we are really a bottom 5 turnover differential team. When you look at our defense and you look at our offense, no, we're not. That's going to flip. I'm telling y'all that's going to flip. And it might not flip completely, but if we go even on turnovers, we're losing one game the rest of the year. And that's all we can ask. We can ask that Mahomes continues to trust our receivers even if they aren't trustworthy because it can only get worse if he doesn't trust people. And as long as the defense keeps playing the way it is and Spags keeps being the assistant coach of the year, we're going all the way. All right, y'all, that's going to wrap it up for the Monday Night Football review. Have a happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Friday, we're going to be back with you with that Raiders Week preview. Hopefully you can sit with your thoughts, think about the game a little more, and come with some optimism for this final stretch of games. 7 games to go. That 1 seed is still in reach. If we win out, we're the 1 seed. If we drop a game, we're still probably the 1 seed. So just stay optimistic. Have a great Thanksgiving, and we'll catch y'all later.